Well, hello. I'm back today to talk about another couple of Shudder films. I haven't done this in a while. I've combined two movies into one video as far as two separate films, not comparing and contrasting. I'm going to talk about a director today who I just watched all of his work recently, and that is Brandon Christensen. So I became familiar with Brandon's work because on Shudder he released a film called Superhost, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun, entertaining film that looked at this YouTube vlogger culture from a really interesting lens and added in this horror element amidst this family dynamic of this attempting to be newly engaged couple. I really liked the structure of it. I thought it had really great cinematography, and I enjoyed the runtime of it. I thought that it was a fun and engaging horror film, and when I found out that Brandon had other films, I was really looking forward to check them out. Both of them are still streaming on Shudder, so I watched them back to back, and I thought it would be fun to talk about both of them in this video and just give my brief thoughts and talk about someone like Brandon, who's clearly someone like myself who has a passion for film, wants to put ideas on screen, and gets a platform like Shudder to put out his content so that people can see it. And I think that's really awesome, and I look forward to whatever he has to release coming in the near future. But without further ado, I'm going to talk about Brandon's debut feature film, StillBorn. StillBorn follows Mary, played by Christie Burke, a new mother who lost one of her twins in childbirth. As she struggled with the loss of one of her children, she starts to suspect something sinister is after her surviving child, a supernatural entity that has chosen her child and will stop at nothing to take it from her. This is something that we've seen in film before. It's not anything new. Look at a film like Rosemary's Baby, where you have this supernatural entity coming to take a child. And what's different about each of these films is execution. And what I really like about StillBorn is that Brandon looks at this film through the supernatural lens while also focusing heavily on just the family dynamic, and that's what I really like about this and Z, which I'll talk about a little later. I like directors who utilize the horror genre to tell a story that's really emotionally impactful and that has a lot of real life that bleeds through it while adding supernatural elements into it. The perfect example of that being Mike Flanagan, who I think is a master and who is able to build these characters and develop these worlds in such a way that, yes, there's always a supernatural element to what's occurring on screen, but it doesn't take away from the impact of what's going on. So in this StillBorn, you have obviously Christie Burke's character who has just gone through this horrible tragedy of giving birth to twins, but one of them died. And so she has one twin. It's so hard on her that she can't even manage to take the other crib down in the bedroom. And she lives at home with her husband, who is very supportive of her when this first happens. And he's traveling a lot on business and doing a lot of things. And she befriends the next door neighbor into this house that they move into, who's also married and has a young baby. And weird things start to happen throughout the days while she's at home alone. And it just kind of escalates to this third act that is just bananas. When you're watching this movie, the big thing is going to be watching the mental decline of your lead character. And what's really interesting is you have this trope that exists in horror films for some reason where the spouse never wants to believe the significant other when they say something's going on. In this case, her husband not only doesn't believe her, but he installs security cameras in the house so that he can watch her at all times. It's really weird because he takes all trust away from her, and I think that's so strange. It shows their relationship and kind of where they're at and how their dynamic is at that period in time. And I find that really fascinating because obviously, you look at this through the lens of this woman has gone through this horrible tragedy, and he looks at it kind of from the, okay, well, be happy that one of your children survived, move forward in your life, but not really giving her the amount of time to process the grief, and then going as far as to not believe her when she says that something horrible is going on. And it's really interesting to me to see that dynamic play out on screen. And obviously as things progress and things get more intense, his faith in her kind of dwindles. But what I really like is there's elements played in towards the third act of, you ask yourself, is this entity toying with her brain, or is this stuff that's occurring really happening? And that's what I really liked about this movie. I thought that the third act, when things started going out of control, he starts looking into this scenario to see if other people have gone through it, and certain things start happening with her husband, the next door neighbor, and you're like, are these things really occurring? or is it just something going on in her head? And I liked that quite a bit about this film. If I had any issues with this, the very end of the film feels a little rushed as far as the resolve. I don't think it takes away from the experience. I still think it's a really fun movie that I enjoyed watching. I thought it had a nice little supernatural twist on it. And what's really cool is I thought that this was a really great early feature in Brandon's career, but to see how he progresses with Z, which I think is a superior film, even though I liked both movies, it was cool to see him take that family dynamic and kind of grow on it in that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on StillBorn, and now I'm going to get into talking about Z. Z stars Keegan Connor Tracy as Elizabeth Parsons and Sean Rogerson as Kevin Parsons. The family finds themselves terrorized by their 8-year-old son's imaginary friend. So this is also something we've seen in horror before, an imaginary friend or entity coming into the life of a child. Starts out seeming like harmless, like it's not going to affect anyone, and then developing into this really intense, emotionally gripping story. And what I really liked about this is how Brandon really takes his time setting up these characters, making you care about them, and then when things start to go off the rails and get crazier and crazier, you just really hurt for this family because you want there to be a silver lining and something good to happen. But it doesn't seem to be there. It just seems like the bad is going to continue to be bad. Really didn't hold back from the intensity that it was giving to the viewer. And there was this one scene in particular where the son is having a hard time at school. They're saying he's acting out. He doesn't really have many friends. And so Elizabeth, the mother, played by Keegan Connor Tracy, goes to his house who she goes to talk about her son not having very many friends while their two kids play. And there's this scene in a staircase that is just one of the most intense and insane scenes I've watched in a film this year so far, that it really just shook me up. I couldn't believe it happened. And it really adds to that tension that the movie's providing, because there's a lot of quiet moments in this film. There's also some jump scares thrown in and some different things, but amidst the quiet moments, to have something really intense and jarring happen like that is exciting. And I would say the biggest detriment to this is some of the CGI work in the film. The visuals of the monsters don't always work, but I think Brandon does a nice job throughout most of the film concealing it in the shadows and not putting it at the forefront, so that way when they do show it, there's a couple moments where it's really effective and there's a couple moments that it comes off as a little hokey. But it didn't pull me out of that, because I know what it's like to work under conditions where you have virtually no budget or a lower budget and you're trying to convey something and you want it to look a specific way, and you do the best that you can to show it in your film. And I think Brandon does a nice job with that. He gets some solid performances out of his actors. And this movie, I really liked the third act. It is relentless. It does not, it's just like heart-poundingly intense. And I appreciated that a lot about this film, and I think that it's really enjoyable. And I like Brandon's work. I think that he's a quality filmmaker who's going to continue to make really great films. I know he said on Twitter recently that he's got another project that he's working on right now, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that in the near future. But that's my thoughts on Z. I thought that it was a really great film. It's probably my favorite in his catalog, but I really like all his work. And if you have a Shudder subscription, I just recommend going and checking out all three of his films. I think they're all three enjoyable in their own right, and they're definitely worth your time. Have you seen StillBorn or Z yet? Did you love them? Did you hate them? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I obviously enjoyed both of these films, and I think they're definitely worth your time. As always, everybody, if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot. It lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I've got a lot of content planned for the near future. Looking forward to getting that out there for you. As always, everybody, thanks so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.